All right, we are being live streamed on YouTube.
I just got to get onto it. Sometimes it's fun to read the comments, but sometimes it's hard to get on this stupid thing, to be honest.
Well, once you get on it, it's usually okay. There we go. There we are.
Get on it. Get on it. Get on it.
Yeah, I changed our logo on the YouTube now to be the one that LAB made us as well. Oh,
Very
there we
cool.
are. We're live. We're live.
Oh, very excellent.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I saw you did that. That was pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know where the hell she's been.
No, so, I know. I miss Allie.
Yeah, I don't know what the scoop is that, but she's gone off the grid. Although I see her on social media sometimes.
Yeah, I just I'm like probably busy like everybody. Morning, Caleb.
Yeah.
Morning, Kevin.
Hey,
Kevin says you've got a comfortable hoodie on.
It's the best hoodie there. Although I had to take the string out because I don't like the string.
Oh,
but it was good. It was good stuff though.
Hey, Barbara. Good morning.
Hey. Yeah. So I'll get going here a little bit. Yeah, it's funny though. Hey, what's up, Miranda? Hey, you know what? It's funny to be honest because it's with this YouTube thing because it is a little bit different. The dynamic of going on this.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I like it better because like when I heard like, well, it happened to us, but then I found out from like, that Facebook was like basically not going to allow live streams for much longer. And I was like, fine, we'll just take it over to YouTube. And also like not everybody is on Facebook. So, I mean, and I think YouTube's a better platform. Morning, morning, Dan. Morning, David. And Frank's on here from California.
Hey, what's up, Frank? Hey, I thought I read somewhere on Twitter that it said that if you like promote Facebook on Twitter, you get banned or something too. So it's very smart we did that.
Stupid like that. But yeah, no, I was like, let's just go on
social media people being pissy and fucking stupid anyway. It's stupid things that line up, right? No, that's cool. But this, it's a little different. It's good, I guess. Yeah. But yeah,
it's like we couldn't get onto it one day, and I wasn't about to fight with it, and it just I don't know. Then this puts all our videos on one platform as well, and like I said, as soon as we record, we usually put the videos right up there on the YouTube channel, so you can watch them basically like unedited, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. It doesn't freaking matter. Who cares?
But yeah, so we dropped episode 99 yesterday, which was about William Rosecrans, which we were finally happy to get to talk about him.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Rosie's an interesting fella. I mean, he just is. He might be, one of the higher IQ'd people in the Civil War as far as smart.
I think it was either David or Jeffrey the other night in our roundtable mentioned that because we were talking about Rosie in the roundtable.
Well, he's like an inventor and stuff. He invented kerosene and all this other. He had a bunch of patents and I mean, that's a pretty smart dude. I mean, I don't think he understood the world of politics. Anybody who watches House of Cards knows that Rosie could have handled that better. But
just a little bit. Good morning, Scott. Well, the thing that, what's funny is everybody who studies Lincoln is always like, oh my God, he had a patent. And then meanwhile, you read about Rosie and Rosie's like, kind of hold my beer. I had like 7.
Well, I know somebody who was used to be pretty high on Lincoln.
I still respect him.
He used to make a birthday cake on his birthday every year, but not by the just saying.
Because I like to bake. Actually, I used to bake quite a bit, but I've not.
Okay.
I don't know. Fine. This is a fun, stupid thing I used to do.
It's fine. I know it's fine.
No, but the whole Lincoln thing, like, yes, I like. The more it's like anything. The more I study this, the more I was kind of like, you know what? Like, we don't. I mean, my opinion, we don't need another Lincoln biography. It's just he's got enough people speaking for him, and
I think so.
I don't know. It's like anything. The more you study it, you find out different stuff, and you find that there's like, dare I say it, other more interesting people to study. And I'm always been more of a Civil War person, and looking at that than I have about the entire life of Abraham Lincoln. Good morning, Ski. David said that. Frank said. Or David said, inventor, great engineer, definitely brilliant. And Frank said, of course, Rosecrans is a high IQ person. He ended up in California.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Bieber did too, Frank. Not for nothing. But
you guys can keep Bieber.
So you take the yin and the yang with that one. That's another horrible Canadian import we have. I know a couple.
You guys can keep them.
Anyway, no, it's good. No, Rosie's that we had a good talk last week on the roundtable about that. A lot of people, you know, Rosecrans is one of those third rail guys where, you know, you can really piss people off by saying positive words about Rosecrans. And we realize and I it's one of those things we kind of unexpectedly stumbled into.
Yeah.
And there's been a few of that. And he's somebody who, for whatever reason, the people who are really, really big fans of U.S. Grant, which we're fans of Grant too, take any sort of positive words about Rosecrans as an affront to Grant, and I don't know what that was. I think it's because he did too. I mean, he felt the same way too. We talked a lot about that at the round table, and it's just, I don't understand it. Like who you like, but hate who you hate. But there's a lot of knee-jerk Pavlovian hate reactions when you bring up Rosecrans for whatever reason.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the whole that they take, you know, Grant's memoirs in many ways are taken for gospel. So what he wrote about Iuka is what happened. Meanwhile, he changes the story 3 times. What he wrote about Shiloh is what happened. Grant can't be your only source for those battles. I mean, he is a source. He was there. That's his version of the events. But you also, you know, you should be reading Wallace, Prentice, the soldiers to figure out somewhere in the middle is what happened. And I mean, Rosecrans didn't do himself any favors if he was the one that went to the reporter and said, oh yeah, by the way, Grant was drinking. But the other thing too is you get somebody that's really into Grant talking about it, and then you ask them like, okay, well, what was he doing for those 30 hours? Nobody can account for that.
No, but too, no one knows. But also, it wasn't so much that he fell off the grid. Is it the 30 hours comes from the fact that he wasn't responding to messages? So that the Grant people will say he didn't get the messages, which is certainly possible because you had, you know, those 2 colonels who really were the 2 evil people with this, who no one really talks about, right? Yeah. Who are the ones who stuck around, who didn't deliver the messages to Rosecrans at Iuka, who literally got lost and fell in a ravine on the way back.
Yeah, like talk about it's funny. They reminded me of like that, the the cartoon version of Robin Hood by Disney. They reminded me of those 2 vultures, Trigger and Nutsy.
Yeah, I mean,
I just have to give Trigger and Nutsy.
Okay, that's a Trigger and Nutsy would make the cause today. But no, but I think there's certainly a lot of he said, she said, and like we say a million times, whatever history you believe. This whole thing is eye of the beholder. It always has been,
and it's meant to like you have everybody has their opinions. Nobody's wrong. And it's like getting together and talking about that stuff, because sometimes, you know, you can see somebody's got a different perspective than what you do. You know, like there's a lot of like this, when I mention gatekeeping in the Civil War, it's basically to do with the fact that you have kind of these opinions that have become facts for whatever reason. Dan Sickles was wrong. Howard sucks. You know, Wallace was slow. All these things that if you start saying, oh, but wait, there's this side of it, you get shut down for it. And I mean, it's okay to change your opinion. I mean, like I said, my opinion has changed on Lincoln. My opinion has definitely changed on Dan Sickles. And that's just because I read more about it and I started to think, okay, this is how it is. And my opinion changed about Rosecrans. You know, when I first went to Chickamauga, I was like, yeah, this is where he screwed up. And then I read more about it and I'm like, yeah, you know what? This was a bad thing. Like, you know, it's not a great day for the Union, but you know, it's just like the more you read, I mean, you're best to read a lot of stuff because then you can kind of see things from different sides. There's some Gentile's at the Peach Orchard. Speaking of Dan Sickles.
Oh, go say hi to my Connecticut boys right at the Point. Speaking of a shitty day, talk about a bad Thursday. You know.
But there's some more.
You know, speaking of Peach Orchard, you know, you go to the Wentz house, you can see the foundation, right? Yeah, and Tom No, that's the Tom Brady's by the Mississippi Memorial. Okay. But you can go over there, and that's the meeting point of the 11th Corps. Olive Otis Howard, your boy met Olive Otis Corps. That was, you can go over there and you can see that. That's pretty cool. I'm surprised you don't demand a memorial put there.
I might do that someday. So Miranda mentions that she had a college professor that said Lincoln is the second most written about person in history, second only to Jesus Christ. Dan mentioned that he tagged us in an old Facebook post about 2 Western Union telegraphs where Rosecrans asked about rifling smoothbore muskets, and another where he is just trying to get wheel guns for infantry. Thanks, Dan. We'll check that out.
Yeah. Cool.
Caleb said Rosecrans does have one of the better photographs on either side. David mentions, embellishments aside, there is also the fact that writers of the memoirs, be it Grant, Sherman, or whomever, they couldn't be everywhere and witness every part of the battle, and that's very true.
Well, of course, you think we talk many times about the U.S. Grant memoirs, but I mean, didn't Mark Twain help write that with him?
He did.
I mean, so take it for what it's worth. I mean,
someone mentioned that too. Someone mentioned that. I think it was on our roundtable that, Mark Twain had a huge hand in helping Grant with his memoirs. He provided him funding. And I mean, Grant's memoirs are brilliant. He's a brilliant writer. Sherman's are great too. But like David said, they couldn't be everywhere, and it's their version of what happened. Dan mentions that the more he reads about Meade, the more he likes him. That's how I was with Meade too. Like the more I read about him, MJ said her opinions have changed on several things with the more reading and scholarship she's done.
Well, that's the whole thing. We've said it a million times. There's nothing wrong with liking who you like and hating who you hate, whatever. Yeah. But the whole thing is you want to have an educated type of theory to be able to discuss it. And everybody who's been on this has been studying this war forever, and my opinions have changed back and forth many times for over these things. Is that the dangerous people are the ones who are closed-minded. Yeah. Who like this regiment, this general, this colonel, this politician,
or say that things can't be that way for this reason,
right? I'll tell you one guy who I completely was turned around on was Dan Sickles, admittedly.
Yep, same.
Because like anything else, I drank the Kool-Aid about him back in the day, and then I started to read, and admittedly, and then when I read Jim Hessel's book, he started to talk about publicly out loud a lot of things I was thinking.
Yep.
I'm like, wait a second, why in the world, if the Charles Payne map is correct, he lined up where he was supposed to, and if as late as July 2nd, Meade was considering an offensive, and Henry Hunt's saying, you might want to put your guns here because we might do an offensive out of here.
Yeah.
What is this mindset? And I think a lot of it comes from Hancock's quote about, he'll be stumbling back here soon. And he ended up being right about that.
Yeah.
But as you read this, it's like, wait a second, I don't think this is as black and white as people think it is.
No, it's not. There's very many layers to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Frank said that he's definitely has more of an affinity of Rosecrans because of our episode. Thank you for that. And MJ said she didn't know much about Rosecrans, but she's researched him for portraying Pauline Cushman because they were friends, and she says he's underrated. Caleb mentions that one of his favorite generals is AP Hill, and he has his reasons for that, and that's great. I think it's great when people have a person or people that they're really, or they have a thing that they like to study. But yeah, getting back to, Gentili mentioned just walk the position Sickles was supposed to occupy, and now where he moved. That's the best way to try and understand the mindset.
I mean, you want to talk about an obstructed view seat, go find Dan Sickles' original placement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, good luck getting artillery in there. And you're in that swampy, rocky, you might as well be in the friggin' moon. Yeah. And so he did have authority from Meade to adjust his line.
Yeah.
And he did send many couriers 5 times back to the big man over there at the Leicester House to get some sort of clarification. He never got his thing returned. You couple that with the fact that Hunt's telling him that he might be on an offensive, Meade's son telling him the same exact thing, Mini Meade, right?
that was such a great Mini Meade.
So what are you supposed to think? But again, 150 plus years go by.
Yep.
Dan Sickles turns into this guy who twists the mustache. Yep. How is designed to, and that's what happens. And that's why you got to keep reading this stuff.
I agree. And the other thing too is I understood it more to when I went to Chancellorsville and I saw Howard's position. And that's when you realize it's not really anything to do with Hazel Grove.
Well, that was a sad moment for you going to that spot. I could almost
love that.
We should have played Enya's song in the background. God. So you were so crestfallen seeing that spot.
I was not. I thought it was very amazing to see it, but to go into the woods and then to come out where Jackson's men did. But and we've said this a million times. Sickles has what happened to Howard in his head, not Hazel Grove. That's my opinion. And we talked about that with Hessler. That's nothing to do really with Hazel Grove. It's everything to do with recognizing that shit, I'm hanging in the air like the 11th Corps and Howard was. What am I going to do? But I mean, you have things like that, my opinion has changed on Sickles. My opinion has changed on what happened to Rosecrans at Chickamauga from the perspective that he had PTSD. Like, my opinion, he had PTSD there. And I mean, what are you going to do? Like, you see a sea of blue coming at you, and then you also see a sea of gray, and it's like, oh shit. But the other thing too is, odds are Rosecrans did not write that order to Wood, and the order that Wood received, first of all, it's like vague book. Like, you don't really know. It's like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. But Wood was also the type of guy that, you know, he was kind of his own problem. And well, he was one step away from being court-martialed. So you gotta do it, dude.
Well, Thomas Wood's going to question a couple different moves, and by the time it's like the boy who cried wolf, or the hell the stupid thing is. But by the time he gets to Chickamauga, and he's like, you know, I don't know, Davey, I don't know, right? That whole thing. He had no choice but to do it, and by moving his men, he created that gap that Hood and Longstreet's guys burst through, and that was the end of Chickamauga. That was, you know, and that was the end of pretty much Rosecrans. But again, it's fun to look back and study this thing, and there's a lot of different competing factors. The thing about Rosecrans is, you know, when he had the Army of the Cumberland, he had an all-star set of generals.
He's got, like, I mean, Crittenden's pretty good.
He had Thomas Crittenden. He had the Rocca Mill Springs George Thomas, right? He had a lot of really good people.
Yeah.
But to offset that, so did Bragg, right? Army of Tennessee. He had Claiborne, certainly, and Leonidas Polk at one point. He had a lot of these guys, you know, William Hardee. I mean, he had a lot of good people too. And then he has Longstreet coming. He had Bushrod Johnson with him. So it's not, I mean, so I think like Bragg has pluses and minuses as well. But he's like, I mean, he's like a manager of having a great bunch of players, and you still fall on your dick. You might as well coach the Yankees or the Cowboys, if you think about it. You know, that he might as well. But that's the way that's for you, MJ and Miranda, by the way.
Yeah, God. MJ said there was a gatekeeper on her. She does trivia for her Gettysburg. He's on her dead on Saturday nights. And I guess she had one about Ireland's men, and some guy got on there and was like, he's not as good as Chamberlain.
Oh, well, here we go.
What the hell?
Well, I mean, that's the thing about it. And it's, you know, if you like, look, I like Chamberlain, good New England guy, good manner.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is no doubt of the fact that he's had the benefit of having a good PR department. And don't forget too, he lived.
Chamberlain is his own PR department.
I mean, right, but he's a guy who he took that ball to Petersburg. People didn't think he was going to live, and he was told his hometown newspaper said that he was he had died, right?
Yeah.
So now you've got this hero who was apparently resurrected from the dead.
Yeah.
Who when John Rambo on Round Top and saved the world. And there's nothing wrong with believing that.
No.
But when you, and that a lot of that is thanks to Michael Shara and thanks to the movie. Yeah. But when you study this stuff and you realize that there's an other end of a flank, and my personal opinion, again, my opinion, not fact, David Ireland was more instrumental in Gettysburg than Joshua Chamberlain was.
I would agree with that.
Now, okay, but it's not. But he died in Atlanta. You know, he got the dysentery and then died of dysentery, like that picture. He didn't make it. But what he did, and the fact of the matter is, what people don't always understand. The 137th at Gettysburg was their first engagement, their first time. And they fought like they've been fighting for years. And the 20th had, they were at Fredericksburg, they missed Chancellorsville, so they were sick. But when you look pound for pound, what he did, if Oates' Alabamans get on Little Round Top, they're going to get pushed off by the 6th Corps in about 5 seconds. Okay. If the Confederates, if Maryland Stewart gets onto Culp's Hill, that's game. That's it. Because now they're going to set up there, and you're behind the Union line, and you got from the east and the west pushing on Cemetery Hill. That's game. So anybody who tells you otherwise, you believe what you want to believe, but no one's going to convince me otherwise, because that seems very logical.
I agree, and the positioning of the 137th New York and Culp's Hill and everything that happened there, to really truly understand, how badly that could have been if the Confederates had got up there, but just to understand the position, you do have to go there and wander down to where, all the big rocks are and stuff. And it's one of those things, that's where it really hit you how important Culp's Hill is. And Frank asked, is it really true that Chamberlain insisted his family call him governor?
Yeah, he did. I mean, look, I would suggest if you find yourself in Brunswick, Maine, okay, which is like saying if you find yourself on the North Pole, but if you get a chance to get up there, visit his house, take the tour, because it's a pristine place.
Oh, it is.
It's almost exactly the same. And the stories you get, I love the fact that he has this big chair. It's like the Game of Thrones chair, right? That he used as his governor of Maine. Yeah. And somehow it disappeared, ended up at the University of Maine. They used it for their homecoming parade where the queen would sit there and wave until someone finally realized it was Chamberlain's chair. And this is like 20 years ago. Yeah. And now it sits in his house. But he sat there and he was a governor of Maine, and he was a very successful governor. And he made his wife call him governor, which is a baller move if you think about it.
Don't get any ideas.
I ain't running for governor. You call me sir, damn it.
Excuse me. Sir fucker.
Okay. Okay. But there's so many. That's a place to go, and you can go visit his grave across the street. It's pretty neat. Yeah. They tell and his house was kind of like that conduit after the war. People like John Brown Gordon visited there, Howard visited there, Sherman visited there, and it is that great story where they had a kitchen table. They all sat around drinking whiskey. Probably not Howard. Probably juggling. Probably not Howard. But they all sat around the table, and they all carved their initials into the wood with a penknife. And then tragically, they got rid of the table and sold it, and it's lost to history.
Who knows?
Somebody somewhere has a table they bought at a yard sale with Sherman's signature carved into a knife. Howard, Brown. And it's lost to history, which is really sad. But can you imagine sitting there in the kitchen with all those generals talking the war, drinking whiskey, smoking cigars?
That would be like all those fly on the wall moment right there.
Oh my God! You kidding me? That would be awesome.
I just put a link in the chat for everybody. We added a new page to our website this morning that features the art of our friend Emily Edwards Turner, and so it's on there now. Mm-hmm. So everybody can check that out.
What I will say, what's a little sad though about the Chamberlain house is he has the ultimate man cave of all his stuff. Yeah, it's got the bullet that went through his pelvis and cut his urethra, which if you want to see that, it's got his boot that had got shot at Gettysburg. It's got his sword that was dented. It's got his Medal of Honor that was found in a book years later. But he had a Confederate battle flag that hung on his wall, and he had somewhere, and it was an authentic one. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, the stupid house took it down because people got pissed at it, which is ridiculous.
I personally, as somebody who has worked in the history field, like in museums and stuff, to me, they should have kept that flag up because that is how Chamberlain had it, and that is part of his story. And to take it down is, I don't know. There is something really that really bothered me.
It would have pissed Chamberlain off. But my thing is, when I did the tour one time,
I know you touched it.
They were walking. There was a tour group, and I reached around and I touched it when the guy wasn't looking. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. But no, but something like that it belongs there. Like I don't. But that's
it's part of history. And the thing with when you have artifacts in a museum, you have them displayed for a reason, especially when it's a historic house, because that is how that person had it, and it tells their story. And it's that's what you're trying to get across. Well, that would be a great question though, is if you're okay, why does he have a Confederate flag? You tell the story about it.
But here's the thing: if like I've got all the Civil War shit, right? If someday something happens and years go by, I wouldn't want someone taking something off my wall that I thought was important to put up here. And that, I don't agree with having a Nathan Bedford Forrest in a black neighborhood statue, but I will tell you, that one was absolutely asinine. But I digress. But
I could tell the guy giving the tour, he felt the exact same way that we did about it. But I mean, as someone who, you see some stuff in museums that you're like, why do they have that? But there's a reason. And I mean, to take that away from like the way Chamberlain had intended it to be displayed, I don't know. To me, that's kind of goes against a lot of what museums are there for. And I mean, if some person went in and was like, I'm offended by this, it's like, no, then you tell the story about this is why we have it here.
Well, I'll tell you, I have all the Civil War stuff in my little room here, and I have that.
Yep, that's what we have here.
Okay.
Yep.
With all the stuff here. So with the US flag and the purple flag. Yep. So no one's anyway, but that's cool. But what's cool about Brunswick, honestly, is that Joshua's Tavern.
Oh yeah, I was just Amanda from Chicago. Hope the snow's all gone down. I think she was stuck inside all day yesterday. And yeah, she loves Brunswick, and she says you can get some great beer and seafood there too. And I mentioned Joshua's Tavern, which is an amazing place. Caleb was wondering, didn't Gordon and Chamberlain correspond for a bit after the war? Is that some not
they did
fabricated? They did. They were best friends.
They did.
They were very close after the war. And I think it all goes back in the house we have that.
I mean, they were close. I don't know if he let him touch his drum set or anything. I don't know if they were that close.
That's so bad.
But I think they were close. So it's funny how the strange bedfellows. But I just always think about the what it must have been like to be in that kitchen with them when they're all sitting around drinking, talking war stories with, just imagine that the stuff that was said with Howard, Chamberlain, Gordon, and Sherman just sitting around. Can you imagine?
Sherman was apparently an amazing, very animated storyteller. And going off on, I don't know where this is going today, but anyway, it's typical ADD Civil War Breakfast Club live stream. They're apparently, now maybe it's in someone's attic, but there is apparently a recording made on one of the wax cylinders from 1891. I think, or no, 1890 or 1889 or something. It was made a couple of years before Sherman died. Anyway, he apparently there's a recording of him talking about the March to the Sea. So somewhere out there is William Sherman's voice, and wouldn't that be a find?
I bet it's creepy, like Edward Booth's voice. Remember that?
Yeah, that was apparently Sherman had kind of like Robert L. O'Connell described him as being like a male Katharine Hepburn.
Oh, we talked about that.
So that's, and I mean, when Howard mentions him in his memoirs, he'll describe Grant as just kind of sitting there very stoically. And he said Sherman would constantly be shifting in his chair. He would get up and walk around.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Burn it all, Blackjack, burn it all.
Everybody get that voice out of your head now. Sherman talk like a male Katharine Hepburn. So bad.
I know. Sorry, Atlanta. Sorry.
But yeah, and Kevin mentions that as grandiose as Chamberlain comes across and his gravesite is very simple, and that's very true. And it's the same with Howard. Howard's got a very simple grave too.
Well, the first time I found Chamberlain's grave, and up the years ago, it took a while to find it. Even with the Find a Grave site, it took a while because I was expecting to look like Philip Kearny's grave at Arlington, admittedly. And it's just a simple little grave, like a reddish stone gravestone, and it's got a great little perch. You can sit there and smoke your cigar, Mary.
Yeah,
great little place, but it's good. It's really fun to go. But it was it's a great little town, and if you really want to, if you want to venture even further north, go out by Bangor, go to Brewer, Maine.
Yeah,
and that's his hometown. You get a lot of cool stuff up there too. I'm sure
Amanda mentioned the little round top, and then Caleb said that the voice in Ken Burns' documentary for Sherman, that's probably how he sounded too.
Yeah, and a friend of mine actually helped build the mini little round top in Brewer. Admittedly, was part of her community service that she had to do, but if that's a great site. We've said this before, but if you go up to Brewer and you go visit just across the bridge, you can go visit a little round top replica, which has the rocks. It looks just like, I don't say it looks exactly like, but it looks a lot like the round top. It's got the rock with the statue, but instead of Gouverneur K. Warren, it's Chamberlain. Yep. So but it's a cool little place.
No, it is. It's Caleb said, or not Caleb, Frank said that I too always imagine that everyone's voice sounds like the Ken Burns documentary.
So yeah, breweries. Amanda says Mason's Brewery there is a really good place in Brewer. That was my favorite place to go.
Yep. There's so many great places to go when you visit these battlefields and that's the one thing, like I always try my best when I go to these towns, especially if they're smaller towns, not to go to the chain restaurants, but to go to like the Joshua's taverns, or sadly, we found out that the Terminal Brewery in Chattanooga closed down, which was my favorite place to go in Chattanooga. And apparently it was a victim of too high of a lease, unfortunately. So the owners were like, or the people were like, nope, we're not going to go there anymore. So it's unfortunately gone, but there's a lot of great places that you can go. And yeah, Joshua's Tavern is one of them. And,
no, it's really cool. I mean, it's not like it's got a lot of Gettysburg, it's got a lot of Civil War, but it's a great place to sit at the bar and you sit there and talk to these lobster fishermen or captains and typical Maine people.
Well, we were talking to those the fishing or the lobster guys that night. We were in Joshua's Tavern.
Yeah, no, but that's what's great about going to these Civil War towns is it's the conversations you have at the bars. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's I would rather sit at the bar at Sweeney's, or I'd rather sit at 1781 in Spotsylvania and talk to locals about their experiences of these Civil War areas.
That's sometimes how you find out about the history of the area.
And that's the thing too, is what I tell you, one of my favorite conversations ever was at the West End Brewery in Charleston, talking about some old codger Sherman's girlfriend saying that he didn't burn the town because he had a girlfriend there who begged him not to. Who the hell knows if it's true or not? But you know what? To him it was, and that's real personal history because that's how people think. And those are the stories. I mean, as great as the battle walks are and the ranger tours are, the local stories are the best ones because they're folklore. And that's Mary Chestnut Diary, her diary is one that some people take a warm beer piss on from time to time because not a lot of it is true. But you know what? That's what she thought was happening. If you read that diary, especially as Sherman was going through Carolina, it talks about all the stuff he was doing. He was basically eating children, and so that's not true, but it shows you the fear they had and the rumors that were going on. And I've said before, when 9/11 happened, all the rumors that were going on, granted it was a long time ago, of all this stuff happening, and it turned out not to be true, but it puts you in that spot of imagining what the mindset was and the fear was. And that's not black and white history, but it's real history. It's human history. And that's what's great about it. I enjoy the hell out of it.
No, I agree. And I love doing that too, finding out about, like the fact that in Ringgold Gap, they think that's where the March to the Sea began. It wasn't in Atlanta, and local history says it is in Ringgold Gap. And it's cool talking to the people, and you can find out a lot. I think you can find out a lot about them. And I mean, the other thing too, that getting back to kind of the Mary Chestnut, like this thing is things are happening in real time. I always go back to that one letter that Howard's wife, Elizabeth, wrote him the day after the Lincoln assassination. And at that point, Howard didn't even know. He doesn't find out until the 17th, but she wrote a letter to him the day after. And she's talking about how worried she is about having Johnson as president, that it's just and she's saying this is the worst thing that could have possibly happened. And you can see that she's going through a lot of emotions with it.
Yeah,
and I think by that point, Howard knew he was going to be on the Freedmen's Bureau. And I think she was probably worried for how hard his job was going to become, because and she just was like, I can't believe Johnson's going to be president. Like, she was not happy about it at all. And she was very, very upset by the assassination. And it's a letter that is clearly her very raw emotions at the time.
Well, think about it. You think about Mary. If Edwin Stanton didn't have it otherwise, it could have been President Rosecrans, going back to the Rosecrans thing.
Exactly. Yep. That's one thing we learned about him, is that he was considered for Lincoln's vice president.
Well, Garfield, the general, the politician, not the cat, he wanted him to be vice president. And he was actually interested in that.
Yep.
And the story is he sent a telegram letting Lincoln know he was interested as a war Democrat. And Stanton got it, looked at it, and disappeared. That's what a lot of people think.
Stanton is one of the shadiest figures in the Civil War. I cannot stand him.
No.
He does really great after the assassination, I think, with getting things under control. But, learning that about Rosecrans, it's like, think of how different things might have been. Rosecrans would, I think, have been a great president.
Kerosene for everybody.
Yeah. Kerosene for everybody.
Well, it's true though. I mean, he would have been better than friggin' Andrew Johnson.
Oh, God.
Right. I mean, but that be careful what you wish for with that, because I mean, he but it's interesting. You could have had a Rosecrans running against Grant for the presidency in an election. Can you imagine how that would have gone?
Oh my gosh, the smear campaign each of them would have done to each other.
I mean, these are like the two Golden Girls fighting. I mean, these guys just never. I mean, they never. But I mean, like I said in the episode, once you got in Grant's doghouse, unless your name was Sherman or Sheridan, you were never getting out of Grant's doghouse. And it was Stanton was very much the same. Stanton didn't like Rosecrans because Rosecrans stood up to him. Rosecrans was like, Stanton wanted to do one thing with what McClellan was doing. It was around the time, I think, of this, was it around 7 days or something? And Rosecrans was like, no, I think we should do this. And Stanton's like, no, we're not. And then all of a sudden, like, Rosecrans is transferred out west. Stanton had an agenda. He had an agenda. I think he clearly wanted to be president.
Yep.
And he died before it happened. But I think because he was maneuvering, like we mentioned, House of Cards a little while ago.
Yeah, that's what he was doing.
He was maneuvering the pieces one by one.
Yeah. And
he clearly was, because Rosecrans was a popular guy. Even after everything going on with Grant, he was still popular. Yep. And he was somebody who, would have been a good rival to Grant. Now you talk about, McClellan versus Lincoln, right? That's a walk in the park compared to what Grant Rosecrans campaign would have been.
Oh my God!
Because the stuff, the issues that McClellan had or Lincoln had with him were a little more on a higher level.
Yeah.
The personal shit that would have come out. Could you imagine? It'd be like one of today's friggin' debates.
Oh, exactly. It would have. And I mean, the thing is like one of my favorite things is Gideon Wells's diary, because that's where we have the account of Grant saying. And that's why I said allegedly in the episode, allegedly Grant said Stones River's not a victory. But if you want some fucking like soap opera daytime drama, read his diary, because he talks about the rivalries in the cabinet. I think there's one entry where he's like, well, we didn't get shit done today because Stanton and someone else can't stop fighting. Here we go again, and it's basically all this drama that is, sometimes holding things up from getting done because there's all these different rivalries.
You ever see the movie? You ever see the movie Dave?
Yep. We watched that together.
Did we? Stanton was the Frank Langella character.
Oh, absolutely.
The guy in the background who felt he was significantly smarter than the president, who tried to maneuver it in a way that he would be the guy at the end. And he just died before it happened. And that's how it was. I mean, look, the politics back then are no different than they are at any time.
No, there was it was very backhanded back then. And, a lot of people think that, MJ says she loved the movie.
That is a good movie.
Yeah, it is. The thing is, Stanton had a lot of disdain for Lincoln, and it wasn't McClellan who originally called him the well-meaning baboon. It was actually Stanton. Caleb mentions that in the chat. And he did that during the Reaper trial, which was in Cincinnati. And Lincoln was brought on this team of lawyers, which one of them included Stanton. And you talk about mean girls, they ignored him at a restaurant. That's where Stanton called him a baboon behind his back. And he was Stanton was a real prick to him. So for Lincoln to pick him for his cabinet was pretty admirable, I think. But yeah, now he's brought in after what's-his-face gets shipped off to Russia. The original Secretary of War, Cameron, who was like, I think Lincoln said about him, he'd steal a red hot iron. You okay there?
Yeah, knock these stupid things. I hate these stupid things. I need one of those headsets.
So anyway, you didn't hear me say this because your headphones weren't in. Simon Cameron, Lincoln said about him, he would steal a red hot iron or something like that. Like, his ass got sent to Russia. Oh yeah.
He got basically sent to Siberia.
Frank, I'm talking about Gideon Wells's diary. I think if you just Google Gideon Wells diary, you can read excerpts from it, but it's actually, and his writing about after the assassination, the day after is it's very raw too. It's really cool to read that part of it. And it's sad too, how he's describing it.
Well,
David said he can't stand Stanton. Wells, I like. Wells is my favorite member of the cabinet.
See, Gideon Wells, the thing about him is that, he's in charge of the Navy when there really wasn't a Navy.
Yeah.
And, we talked a lot, with the Lion and the Fox thing with Alexander Rose, right? Was the state of the Navy. And, when you think about the Navy, you think about Vicksburg, certainly, you think about Fort Fisher, you think about the blockade. But we're not talking about a Navy. We're talking about a couple of dinghies in the SS Minnow. That's what we're talking about here. The Union Army had 42 boats when the Civil War started. The Confederacy had one. Mm-hmm. And they had to basically petition every single boat that could float for this thing. Yeah. Now, when you think about the blockade, you see that picture of the big snake that goes all the way around Virginia to Texas, right? Yeah. And there was in 1854, there was the thing called the Declaration of Paris. And that said that if you couldn't defend a blockade, like at Gettysburg at the angle, there's the monuments, the 20th Mass, they're all nut to butt right next to each other. Yeah. If you can't defend a blockade that well, the blockade is irrelevant. For England means it's not really a blockade, it's an optional blockade. And it went to a lot of different things. But Gideon Wells, he's like, why the hell am I doing this? Because it doesn't matter, because this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, doesn't understand the Navy at all. And that's a big part of it. And so when you study Wells, for example, you could only imagine he's like the guy if you have a job, you have a boss who has no idea what you do, and you just sit there and collect a paycheck. That's Gideon Wells there.
I think he was pretty good. I like him.
He's really good, but he's like, I know more. The whole fiasco with Fort Fisher. Oh yeah. Talk about Butler and all stuff where they wanted to do this. The Navy did. And they're going, and it's he got to the point where it's like, I know what I need to do. No matter what I say, this guy doesn't listen to me. So you know what? Screw it. Whatever. Yeah. I'm just going to grow my beard, make it white. That's what I'm going to do.
I will say I loved his character in the movie Lincoln, even though he's not in it very much. And Stanton was very well played too. And Lincoln referred to them as was it Mars and Poseidon? Or
it was something like that.
Yeah, he had nicknames for them or something. And I like Wells. And there's the other one, Blair. Blair gets his ass kind of fired from the cabinet.
Yeah.
James Speed is brought in to be Postmaster General, I think. I think it's James Speed. Joshua Speed's brother is brought in to be Postmaster General, I think.
But when you think about this patchwork, throwing a Band-Aid on this stuff, that's what a lot of it was. And it's actually a miracle that the blockade thing and actually the blockade didn't even work anyway. I mean, England was still getting a shit ton of cotton. Yep. The South was still getting a shit ton of gunpowder, which they
Beauregard
really
was still getting his Bordeaux wine. That's the funny thing I read in Alex Rose's books is he's talking about some of the stuff that is coming over to the Confederates. And one of the things that Beauregard liked to get, or Beauregard as we call him, was Bordeaux wine. I'm like, what a snob, but also I commend that man right there. It's like, you're out in a battle campaign and you're like, I want my Bordeaux wine.
You've got the Confederacy building these really fast moving blockade running boats, going past these little horrible little fitted boats. It's if it was a real blockade that England would have had to respect, that would have been one thing, but it wasn't. It really, really wasn't. And then when they started using the Florida, right, and attacking the merchant boats, that was pulling more boats out of the blockade line to chase those boats, the whole thing was falling apart. Yeah. And then once the ironclads came around.
Oh yeah,
and that's why when you start looking at his book you mentioned, Thomas Dudley, the efforts he did to block Liverpool, England, from building these warships, that you want to talk about. People want to talk about what changed the war. Was it Antietam? Was it Vicksburg? Was it Gettysburg? You really want to study one. Look at the fact where the Union Army and the government stopped England from building ironclads. Because the Enlistment Act of 1819 that was finally able to be stopped. England was looking the other way as the Confederates were building these powerhouse boats.
Yeah.
And because of a guy like Thomas Dudley, who no one knows about, you were able to stop that. And they would have controlled the seas, broken the blockade. That would have been game changer. I think that's one of the more important points that people need to study is that.
Yeah.
No question.
Oh, David, he also mentioned the Lion and the Fox talking about how they smuggled in a bunch of wine for Beauregard.
It's wine.
He's getting wine and cheese. Now, I think I read somewhere, and I don't know, maybe someone can tell me if this is correct or not, that at one point, like Beauregard went gray early in life and he dyed his hair.
What's that like? Wonder why.
I've been going gray since I was in my 20s. Anyway, that's why I dyed
Sure, Jan.
Anyway, so apparently he couldn't get his hair dyed. So partway through the war, he's like completely gray because he can't get his hair dyed. But he was getting his Bordeaux wine. Well,
they were getting wine, furs, chandeliers. Hey, we stumbled into an anti-fur rally yesterday in the city.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't think they still had those.
I should have brought my like rabbit fur hat that I have.
We're stumbling around Newbury Street in Boston yesterday, and there's a big anti-fur demonstration going on with everything going on in the world. Like that seems like, welcome to
that's random.
It's like 1967. That was pretty weird, but
I mean, good for them. But I was like, wow, I wish I'd brought my rabbit fur trimmed hat.
Well, that's true. Okay. My big shapka.
Yeah.
I could look like Kramer in that one episode with the big fur coat with the pimp episode.
Hilarious, actually.
Give me one of those. But no, but you look at a key point in the Civil War. I mean, if you really want to pick an event, it's probably the Emancipation Proclamation in a lot of ways, because it kept England out. It put the black soldiers in the Union, all that stuff. But being able to finally put their thumb on stopping a navy, because the boats that the Confederacy were looking to build, Stephen Mallory, he was a secretary of the Navy for the Confederacy. They were building these powerhouse boats that would have absolutely dominated and crushed the Union Navy. But they were able to stop England from building them because of the Federal Enlistment Act that they were finally able to bust. So, but that book is cool though. Read that book because it explains
it's really
a lot
good.
Of it.
Yeah. And that episode will be hopefully dropping next Saturday or Sunday. I just have to do some editing. We're going to edit it. We had a really great chat with Alex. And then the book club is going to be February the 22nd. I think it's at 6:00 Eastern.
Yes.
6:00 Eastern via Zoom. On February 22nd. So Alex will be joining us to, you guys can come on and ask questions about the book.
Speaking of protests, Mary, I've told you this before. Maybe I haven't. Maybe fake Newton in my imagination. I told you this, but me and some friends were in Washington, D.C. the other day, a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And there's always protests in front of the White House.
Yeah, that's what Kevin was saying.
Yeah, there always is. No matter what the hell's going on. So we made a sign and we went to the protest in front of the White House. You know what it said? Continental breakfast is not real breakfast. And held it up.
Of course you did.
And that's why I can never run for office, because all that picture will show up, but that's pretty funny.
But yeah, like Lion and the Fox, really great book. Other announcements, since we're announcing stuff right now. February 18th at 1:00 at Fourscore Brewing and in Gettysburg, we are going to be having a hangout to celebrate our 100th episode. So if you guys are in Gettysburg at that time, come join us for that. And just to let everybody know, I think the event might almost be sold out. But March 4th, Seminary Ridge Museum and Battle of Gettysburg podcast are doing an event too.
Oh, that's going well.
Enough said about that. Anyway,
I don't get it. There are things I don't get. I just don't get
same. But yeah, that's and that is about obviously about the Battle of Gettysburg. So it's going to be Jim Hessler and Eric Lindblade from Battle of Gettysburg podcast, Pete Mealy and Cody Aish from Seminary Ridge Museum, as well as Stu Dempsey, who's a licensed battlefield guide, and he knows his shit about the 11th Corps as well. They are all going to be presenting on Gettysburg they have an in-person that you can go to at Seminary Ridge Museum, and that sounds really cool because you can go up to the cupola at night, but they also have a virtual option too. So I think Seminary Ridge Museum has it on their website. MJ mentioned there's just a few seats left for the March 4th event, but you can get virtual as well for that. Caleb mentions he's going to start Lion and the Fox today. Yeah, that is a really good book. I think I have it here.
No, what's great about that book, to be totally honest.
If I can I can't
You have to hold right up to the screen. It looks good. Looks good, Mary.
No, you can't, because Zoom doesn't allow.
Yeah.
When you have a background, you can't see it.
But for real, it's a good book. It's a part of the war. And what's neat about it is no one studies this because no one does, but there's so much cool things about spies and disguises and pirates and all the stuff that went on with this.
Yeah.
And Alexander Rose is a good dude. And he really knows his stuff with this. And so that book is one of the, you can read Coddington, Fonz, anything you want, McPherson, but you will read that book, and I guarantee you will learn something, and you go, how the friggin' hell did I not know this?
I know, he makes it so interesting. Well, first of all, it is a really interesting story, but he writes in a way that you're like, wow, is this actually happening? Some of the characters in it, like, we told him, like, this has to be a TV show, just like Turn was. There's so many characters. You got Dudley, you got Bullock, you got that Semmes guy, you got
Raphael Semmes, but you got a Union spy they called the Black Crow, who dressed in all black, and he was,
and then Agent X,
and he had to be told, don't kill anybody, don't kidnap anybody.
Yeah,
he's
don't blow shit up,
and he's like, gonna do it, don't care, because they had to keep this neutrality thing, and so the Trent Affair just happened, right? So you have the that whole thing go down, where you had James Mason and James Slidell get caught on the boat.
That was right? the thing that is really good, that I really liked about this book, and you don't see this in a lot of like Lincoln biographies when they talk about it, because it could have got bad real quick. And Rose talks about that. The Trent Affair was really bad.
Well, that was really bad because at the time England was like 99% Confederate support. I mean, you had Confederate flags flying. A guy named Charles Prelot. He was a big financier at a company called Fraser and Trenholm, and he had a big Confederate flag flying out of his house, and he was a big supporter, as a lot of people were. The Trent Affair was this close to flipping that neutrality.
Yep.
And England said, we want you to release them and apologize. And Lincoln released them, and he refused to apologize.
But he did not apologize.
What's really cool though is, do you know where Mason and Slidell were held prisoner?
Wasn't it? It's not in Canada.
It's in Boston here.
That's
Fort
right.
Warren.
That's right too.
They actually held prisoner here at Boston Harbor, and so that could have gone. But then the Emancipation Proclamation happened, and that 99% went. Yeah, and it became more pro-union, because they basically made the war about slavery, and England wasn't having that. But the book is really good though, and it's very fascinating. If you like spies and pirates and all that stuff, and intrigue, and the book it's factual, but it reads like it's a novel, like it's one of those historical novels. Definitely check it out.
It's very, very good. And I wish there were more books written in that way that take it's a very small story in the Civil War, but he tells it so well. And like I said, it's intriguing. Also other stuff, Miranda's like, when are we hunting for Confederate gold? Caleb said Nicolas Cage has a large portion of it. MJ said it's at Monocacy with the hoodies. Frank said it's buried under Buster's monument at a little round top.
Yeah, find Buster's grave. He's buried over there in the National Cemetery, and go ahead and just grab a shovel and start digging, and you'll find it. I'm sure no one will have a problem with that.
How long? Caleb's wondering how long it took you to read the book.
220 pages, so
not too bad. No, it's not too bad.
Days.
Yeah, it's really good.
I mean, it's a book that really flies. I mean, it's if you're into it, which I'm sure he is, you'll read that in a couple of days. It's very, very quick, because it really goes. The end gets a little dry because they're talking about a court case when basically England's trying to get Laird Shipbuilding to stop building boats. No, it's interesting, but then it turns into see what happened when the war ended. The United States was pissed off at England for the money they lost in blockade running. So what they did is they said, for all the cotton that you guys snuck out of here, we're going to put a tariff on you. Yeah. We want $100 billion.
Or right? Canada.
And then the company said, and then the country, Andrew Johnson said, or you just give us Canada, we'll call it even. And England said, no, you're kidding
I
me.
love how we're just on the chopping block.
They're like,
you can give us $100 million for Canada.
I mean, I'm sure there'll be some people here who would disagree with that, who some Canadian people who apparently know everything. But I think what'll happen is
Not me.
No, I know too, but it's okay. But that, and they end up settling for $15 million in 1865 money, so which is a lot of money. But that's how much England had to pay the United States to make this issue go away. That's how much of a big of a deal it was. But that was but it's a fascinating, not just the book is good, but it's a fascinating study because, again, there's not a lot of like fertile ground you can study in the Civil War. If you're really into this, you get hundreds of freaking books like everybody here does. It's probably a book and a subject you've read that'll be new to you. And that's what's good about the book.
Yeah, because nobody studies the Navy, and I find it fascinating. I don't know why I'm not more into it, because if you study Farragut is one of my favorite people.
If you're studying the Navy, you're going to study people like Farragut. That's who you're going to study. You're going to maybe Gideon, Wells, things like that. But you're not going to read about the non-battle behind the scenes stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
And there was so much into it, but it's good. I guarantee anybody who reads is going to enjoy it. And come on with us on February 22nd. Have him come on. He's got a very British accent, by the way. And we have him on.
He's a really nice guy.
It's like having you two talk to each other was like the dueling accents.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Well, because I've got the Canadian, Midwestern Wisconsin accent, and he's got this kind of British accent or whatever. But no, it was great. Great recording with him. We really, really enjoyed it.
And what's good about Alex is be prepared to stick around a while, because we had him on for like an hour and a half on this episode.
It was a really good,
because he can that fella can talk. And it's great
really
because but he knows the stuff. Anybody who's seen the TV show on AMC Turn, the Rev War stuff, that's him. He wrote that. Maybe we could do, if he makes this TV show, Mary, on this, we could be in it. I could be like Charles Prelo. Imagine that. That's what
I like was the Paddington guy who spoke 7 languages and nobody knows when he was born or anything.
Paddington Palaki was a Union spy,
and nobody knows when he was born.
No, yeah, he was a guy who was like behind the scenes. He was the fixer in Pulp Fiction, is who he was. That's kind of what he was.
Yeah, there's so many characters in this. That's the thing, is like you can't believe that the characters in it, well,
that's what's cool about it. It's like, how the hell how is Paddington Palaki not a household name in the Civil War? Because you look at the shit the dude did. It's like, oh my God.
I think he was involved in the revolutions of 1848 too, right?
Because in all seriousness, the spy, when you think of Union Civil War spies, you think of Pauline Cushman, you think of Belle Boyd, you think of Sarah Greenhow. You don't think of Paddington Palaki, who might be, the stuff he did was more shady than all of them combined. But no one studies him.
No, it just is. He's such a character, because it's like nobody knows when he was born. I think he was involved in the 1848 revolutions that Carl Schurz was part of. And just 7 different languages. He's quite a character, and that's the thing is, that's what's great about the book, is just all the people that you've never heard of are so fascinating, and then you hear them in the book.
Well, even James Bullock. Like, you read this stuff and you go, this guy, and then if you Google him and everything is real. And I've heard a lot of these guys before, but I didn't really study them because I just never did.
Yeah.
And then when we realized that we were going to have him on, this is going back to like Thanksgiving now.
Yeah.
He sent us his book. We read his book, and it just, you had to catch yourself so many times thinking, this cannot be real. It cannot be. Then you look it up and it is. It's like, damn.
Yeah. Don't say that again.
It was like Friday. Damn. But it's cool. And having him on is really, really cool. And he's somebody who you'll hear a lot about him going forward as far as the TV and movies and stuff like that, because that's who he is, Caleb's setting out gold Bengals. I'm going to tell you something right now. This Bengals game today, not even going to be close. Cincinnati is going to win.
I am cheering for the Bengals.
Cincinnati is going to beat Team Brittany by about 20 points today.
And that is 100% why I don't like the Chiefs, is because of Brittany.
I got nothing against the Chiefs, really. I really don't. I think Kelsey's kind of a D-bag, but beyond that, I think that looking at this, I think out of all the games in this last couple of weekends, and I had the Buffalo game right last weekend too, for the same reason. Cincinnati is going to smoke them today.
Big time. Yep.
But yeah, Caleb, we'll definitely read the book and let us know what you think about it. So I think it's a great. You'll love that book, definitely.
And David mentions like he and Caleb both looking for the 22nd, and David said he totally would watch that, like the book as a movie, or a TV show.
It'd be a great miniseries. I mean, unfortunately, the Civil War has kind of got the scarlet letter on it now for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if they would do that, but I will say though, it would make a fascinating study. It really, really would.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of cool characters in it, and I think I think it's definitely a portion of history of the Civil War that a lot of folks don't really focus on, which is too bad. But I think it is what it is. But
Oh yeah, I agree. Hey, Lynn's on here. She's better late than never. Agree on Cincy winning.
Yeah. The other character was really cool. It's a guy named Clarence Young, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is a guy who Raphael Semmes, who was a Confederate Navy captain who was in charge of one of those raiders who were attacking Union lines, got pissed at him and dumped his ass on an island.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the real life Jack Sparrow, and he comes back and he's the bookkeeper for this whole thing, and he ends up turning state's evidence, and it kind of unravels the whole thing. So I know we've been beating this one to death, but read the book.
Don't want to give too much away because our episode is dropping next Saturday.
I know.
You're always the one that is like, we're not talking about what we're supposed to be talking about, which is the latest episode.
No, but yeah, people like Turn and like the book Washington Spies. You're going to love this book. Everybody here is going to love that book. We'll have a good time with that. So.
Oh yeah, that would be. I'm really looking forward to that. MJ said a new Civil War female spy series is being developed. Female spies by Costner and Morgan Freeman.
That'd be cool. We're gonna have MJ on here pretty soon talking about female spies.
Yeah,
we're gonna have her on. We got to talk about
set that. We got to set that up with her too. But yeah, I think it's like a really great book. And then the next book club after that is in April, and we will be talking with Tim Smith about I always say his name wrong, Grierson's Raid. So we're going to be reading The Real Horse Soldiers, which is a really, really good book by Western Theater Tim Smith, not Gettysburg.
Not Timmy.
Not Timmy. We always say Western Theater Tim Smith, he's also written like this like gigantic book about Vicksburg, which is like 3 volumes or something like that, and I think some of it's still to come out, but that I would love to read, because the only book I've read about Vicksburg, and it's really good, is by Donald Miller. I think it's written by Donald Miller. It's
Donald Miller.
Yeah, it's really good. That's a really good book about Vicksburg, is by him.
No, Vicksburg is good. His book Miller's book is good. There's a lot of good books on Vicksburg, because the best books are the ones that talk about the entire campaign.
Mm-hmm.
MJ will be on pages. MJ, just so you know, I got my Brady jersey ready for you for February, so we'll have some fun with that.
Oh God, yeah, I guess we're going to be seeing MJ in February too.
Yeah, we'll be seeing MJ here in a few weeks. It should be. We'll see how that goes. I saw a picture of her on Facebook wearing a Patriots t-shirt. She didn't tell us she was coming. We could have hung out with her. She was dressed in Pat's gear. Took a picture of the stadium with some popcorn I saw recently. That was strange. But we'll have. But that'll be cool though. But
I'm really excited about our book club books this year. And plus we added in Alex Rose at the last minute. We're like, well, you want to come on and do a book club with us? Because they're easy if we can get the author. It's pretty easy to throw together. Frank said he's looking forward to all the books, but his favorite has got to be Simmons Claiborne. That's I'm really looking forward to having Simmons on to talk about that.
No, so Simmons book. The Grierson book is going to be great, obviously, but the Simmons book on Claiborne, it's really a shame that there aren't more books written about Patrick Claiborne. I don't want to go on his big Claiborne rant again, because we talk a lot about him, but he's a book you'll read, and anytime you read a book of somebody who is kind of, I don't want to say an obscure person because he's not, but someone who's not Grant or Chamberlain or Lincoln, these big, whatever's, you read these books and you sit there and go, why the hell don't more people know about this? Why do you not hear about more of this? If you go on to the Facebook, the serious Facebook sites, not the Lampoon Mayor, but the serious ones, they'll talk about a lot of people, Stonewall Jackson, and justifiably so. These guys all deserve the publicity they get, but there's that second level people, and I don't mean the Tildens. I don't mean that. I mean that higher level guys, and Claiborne certainly won, because Claiborne's a guy. And we were talking this morning over coffee, Mary, that if he stayed in Ohio, he would have fought for the Union.
That's just my opinion. That's just my opinion. He absolutely would have, because his brothers fought for the North. He had siblings and half siblings that fought for the North. Some of them fought for the South. It all just depended on where they happened to live. And like I was saying, it's Arkansas is where he found his home for the first time ever. He never felt at home in Ireland. And I don't think he really found a home in Ohio. But the Ohio thing was just, he was asked to go down and run somebody's pharmacy or shop or something. Hey, he found Freemasonry and he found home. And the Irish, when they fight on either side, they're 100% passionate about it.
I don't blame anybody for leaving Ohio. You know my attitude towards that, Mary.
Well, I have the same attitude.
How Dave Matthews is not from Ohio, I do not know, because he should be.
Dave Matthews, and the other book too that is after Tim Smith and before Simmons is Tom Huntington's Main Roads to Gettysburg, which is another excellent book. And then we will be finishing off the year with Lisa Samia's new poetry book, which is, I think, coming out in the spring. So it should be out soon. So that's pretty cool that we've got all those books lined up for this year. But yeah, I do agree with you. Well, yeah, like I said, we were talking about it over coffee. And my opinion is he probably would have fought for the North. No,
and a lot of that. I mean, you have Lee staying with Virginia. You have Thomas staying with the North. You've got Jeb Stuart's. His relatives staying with the North. There's a lot of that. And so when you think about this black and white, type of thing, is people, you look at Free State of Jones for the movie, for example, read about that. I mean, in the South, it was county by county. There were northern counties and southern counties. This was not you see the big map with the red in the South and the blue in the North. It wasn't really that way. Certainly parts of Maine had Confederate leanings. Parts of New England did. The Copperhead movie, if you see that, it shows that pretty well.
That Copperhead movie is so good. It really shows the war on the home front, and how in the North they weren't always for the war for a variety of reasons. But yeah, Copperhead is a really, really good movie.
Well, I mean, it's the thing that you don't really often consider Maine is interesting, because here we go about Maine again, is they sold a lot of fish to the South for slave plantations. Ironically, one of the foods that they sold to the South for slaves, they thought it was crap food, was lobster. Lobster was basically
Maine lobster is so good.
Right? It is, but at the time it was okay. And so like Charles Tilden, his family made a lot of money because they sold fish to the slave plantations. So there was the economy was big in that. So it wasn't a thing where you automatically were going to, to support one side or the other. Yeah, they were unionists, but they cared about their pocketbook. And when we did Missouri, that episode about Missouri, how they talk about, we have a lot of slaveholding families here, so we're kind of leaning more towards the South. But at the end of the day, we get a lot of money from the North here, so we're not going to flip either. So it wasn't that black and white. It really wasn't.
No, and the other state too that shows that the other state that I really feel is kind of the microcosm for what that's kind of on a smaller scale what is going on with the Civil War is Kentucky, because in one part of the state, you have kind of the more industry, the North, and that's to do with geography. In the other part of the state, you have the slave owners. They're growing crops like tobacco, cotton, whatever. The more labor-intensive crops, the crops and the industry, and just what they have going on in the other part of the state that is more northern leaning, is like that's where you have like the horse, like there's the Kentucky Horse Park, I think, is in that area now. But they are definitely more northern. And again, it goes back to geography and what they can grow there sometimes as well. But Kentucky is like the microcosm of what is happening in the entire United States, I think, during the Civil War. It's not all black and white, as you said.
No, I mean, it is what it is when you look at that. It goes a lot. Sometimes it was literally town by town, family by family. Yeah. Hell, even here in Massachusetts, not everybody was for the Revolutionary War. There was a lot of loyalists.
You still see the loyalist houses here in Plymouth. They're painted white. The chimneys are white.
If you drive around the old towns, Plymouth, Boston, Salem, those towns, you'll still see the Unionist chimneys, like you just said. And,
the loyalist.
I mean, think about it. 1770, 70s before, Bunker Hill, all that stuff. This was basically, England West, and not everybody is like, well, this revolution. Yeah, we don't like the fact that we don't have representation being taxed, but I don't like paying more than for tea that I want to. Mm-hmm. You know what's so funny is after the Revolutionary War, there became such an anti-British backlash here. Yeah. That's why, and so it's almost impossible. Like in a lot of parts of the country, drink tea, and here is heavily coffee.
Yep.
Dunkin' Donuts obviously comes to mind, but it's just fascinating how the study is. But
it is.
I mean, I still got British heritage in my family, so ungrateful damn loyalists, all of them. I
think I'm primarily Irish, a little bit Scottish, and British.
Although I can't get into the soccer thing. I can't get into that. But
Kevin said he's taking notes for his student Boston tours in March.
You know what? We may have to go on his tour in Boston. We may have to go into that. Maybe we'll sign up for that tour.
I'll be Kevin's tour.
I'll be the guy in the background going, actually. No, I think that'll be fun though. He was here this past week and he didn't even reach out to us. I know he did. I'm just kidding. Next time he's here, we'll go. Kevin, we missed you by 1 day, by the way, in Boston yesterday. 1 day. So
Lynn mentions that Winston County in northern Alabama seceded from the Confederacy. She lived there briefly, and that's where she found out about it. She said people there were Scots, Irish, and anti-slavery.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's interesting.
It's a lot of these people, the states' right people. It's like, well, we want to be states' right. So why was the first thing that you did was establish a strong Confederate government and put a conscription in? I thought, I'm from Alabama. I don't want to fight for the Confederacy. I want to fight for Alabama. So what are you doing? So there's a lot of contrasting of things, how that whole thing went down. But lots of northern supporting type of counties in the South, just like there were southern I don't want to say southern, but counties here who just didn't give a shit. Why do I care? It doesn't affect me. I don't need to see my, my kid, go fight for this thing. I don't give a crap about it. But I'm kidding, Kevin. Relax. Don't get your big goofy smile in a bunch.
Goofy smile. Frank says, I drink tea rather than coffee. Metric system and call soccer football. Am I not American?
I noticed Frank put the U in favorite a little while ago too. Don't think I didn't notice that, Frank. Don't think I didn't notice that. Trying to kiss her ass. I don't know what the hell that's all about.
Frank's a good kid. He's part of.
I know.
He's always on our round tables. It's awesome. He likes Claiborne too, which is pretty cool. I know we got a few people who like to study Claiborne on here, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, you know what? I just heard Amanda's comment. We should get everyone to come to Boston that weekend and just go and just heckle Kevin's tour.
Oh my God. Jeez.
No, that's pretty cool. No, I'm looking forward to that though. We'll have a lot of fun with that because I do want to go on his Lincoln assassination tour.
Yeah, and he just mentioned, he's like, that's why I never tell these hooligans when I have my Lincoln assassination tour.
What we need to do is me and Taylor need to go to his tour.
Oh yeah, the three of us should all go.
Wouldn't that be fun? We can just sit there. We can sit there and take notes.
Yep. It's awesome that Kevin's doing tours now.
No, he's
living his dreams. Kevin's a cool guy.
I'm very envious of Kevin. I mean, and so his football team doesn't suck, and he gets to do history. So why the hell wouldn't I?
Yeah, and he goes to Arlington quite a bit and posts lots of cool pictures about it too. So that's pretty cool. But it's episode 100 is coming down the pike soon too.
Yeah, episode 100. I'm looking forward to getting released. And it was cool to have Rose on with us because he was good.
It's great to talk about Rosecrans finally as well for episode 99. We've been wanting to do an episode about him for a long time. And I mean, the thing I liked about it was that, and again, this is just my opinion, but I was able to talk in an episode about the whole PTSD thing, which some people get really bent out of shape over. It's just my opinion. It's just how I'm looking at the situation. But I had someone tell me, they're like, no, you're wrong. It's like, how do you know? I mean, I don't know if I'm right, but how do you know you're right? Like, can't you just want to hear my point of view as to why I think he has PTSD?
Well, I mean, I think it's the problem with history is, to be honest, is, you like to have sources, obviously primary sources that explain it. But the problem with the PTSD thing with him was that it wasn't something that existed. So it was like it did. And I mean, they knew that he wasn't right, but and usually when something wasn't right, you were drunk. That's what they said. I mean,
but Rosecrans, I don't think, was accused of being drunk at Chickamauga. It was like, it was made into that he made a mistake and nobody took into consideration. And at the time they wouldn't, because
it turned into incompetence.
Yeah.
It turned into incompetence.
It didn't go back to like what happened to him at Stones River, which was losing his best friend in front of him, and horribly, in a very violent way.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. But then he's seen a lot of death. And we talked before, when his son Rosecrans Toole died, his grandson rather, that was the final piece of the puzzle for him, and he just checked out and died almost soon later. And those are the things that you have to think about. So MJ is heading out. MJ, we will talk soon. We will good luck. We'll have fun watching football today. We'll definitely have fun with that. We'll be going to the bars here in a little while. We'll have a good time with that, watching that. Oh, I don't want to put my football loyalties against everybody here, but I do think Cincinnati is going to play San Francisco. I think they're going to. Both road teams win today. San Francisco is so good; they just are.
I'm still rooting. I mean, because I want to support. I
got nothing against Philadelphia and that stuff, but I don't like the Chiefs that much. But I just think, looking on paper, I just think it's hard not to see that. What was that Super Bowl? What the hell? 21 was it when they played? When Joe Montana beat Boomer Esiason, was that right around there? It was a couple. It was higher, but I think that's probably what it's going to be. But who the hell knows? But I think it'll be. It's always a great day of football. But I think, going back to Rosecrans, I just think that he clearly something happened. I think you are right with the PTSD, but there's no way to prove it. So if he can't prove it,
opinion. It's just reading between the lines. It's just an opinion, and if somebody doesn't agree with me, that's fine. But please don't tell me or anybody else that we're wrong because we think that way. It's just, and there's absolutely, it's not, it's almost like some people think that if you say he had PTSD, somehow he's weak. He's not. This is a guy that, at Stones River, he wore that jacket for the rest of the day. It's covered in Garrosh's blood, but he's also out riding the front lines, encouraging the men. Sheridan,
no, he was.
I hate to say it, is the hero of the battle. Unfortunately, I don't like Sheridan very much. And Brand and I are going to start that We Hate Sheridan fan club. But anyway,
hold on. Kevin, don't be a baby. Watch the damn game. This is going to be one of those. This is going to be one of those great days for you. They're going to win easily, and you're going to kick yourself for not watching it. Just trust me on this one. You got this. You got this one. Watch it. And then the Super Bowl is a different story. That's going to be a tougher thing. But watch this one today, because you're gonna. I remember when the Patriots put the Steelers back in one of the years, and they went into Pittsburgh and just beat the holy piss out of them. And I knew it was going to happen. And it's the same. And I thank God I watched that, because it just was glorious. And that's what's going to happen today. So watch that. Definitely watch it. But the other thing with Garrosh, though, Mary, was he was Catholic. And that was the other thing, too, that affected him. And there's a story where they went into Garrosh's pocket and took out his Bible, all that stuff. And that affected him tremendously. I think any of these guys, I think there's only so much death that you can deal with. Now, admittedly, Rosecrans was a West Point guy, class of 1842.
Yeah, the big class.
Graduated fifth, with Longstreet and with Earl Van Dorn and all that stuff. Who was probably chasing the ladies nearby. He's chasing fish killed New York. All the chicks are hanging out there. That's where Earl Van Dorn was.
EVT.
Right?
Sounds like an STD.
Right. But seriously, he has a military background, so but still, there's only so much the brain can take.
Well, there is, absolutely. Everybody deals with it in a different way. I mean, however you get through it. You have someone like Grant and Sherman that, I mean, can't say if they had it or not, but I think it all depends on how they deal with it. It doesn't make somebody weak if they do get it. And Rosecrans too at Chickamauga. So he's dealing with probably what was PTSD, but he's also dealing with not sleeping.
Yeah.
That's going to affect him mentally too. he's having this, he got a little bit arrogant after Tullahoma with how he spread his army out. And finally, Thomas is saying to him, Bragg's a lot closer than we think, and we need to GTFO back to Chattanooga, because it's actually Crittenden who takes Chattanooga when Bragg leaves. But then the other thing too is, and this is why I find Chickamauga such a fascinating study, because it could have turned on a dime. It could have gone horribly wrong if you don't have Minty and Wilder on that first day, with how much they totally screw over Bragg. Not only that, but they totally bagged Nathan Bedford Forrest. Like, he does not have a good day at all.
Sharing some of these comments, yeah. So Dan Costello is a big Philly guy, right? So
yeah,
I gotta tell us one more football story. I just have to. So a couple of years ago, when Philadelphia beat the Patriots on an illegal formation, that Philly special, by the way, but I digress on that. So Philadelphia wins. They beat the Patriots. The Pats had 5 Super Bowl wins. The Eagles had the 1. So the next summer, the Red Sox played the Phillies, and I went down there for the game in Philadelphia. And there was a ton of Boston fans. There always are. And we were at this place called Xfinity Live, and I know he knows where it is. It's the big bar right next to the stadium. And they had a DJ, and he was playing all these Phillies Super Bowl. It was all Red Sox fans, so he was playing all these Patriot Eagles Super Bowl highlights. And they were being obnoxious, but it was fun. And so we're walking out. It was one of those deals where you tip the guy. And so I walk out and I give the guy $1. Mm-hmm. And he looks at me and he goes, like only $1? I go, I was going to give you 5, but you think 1's worth more than 5, so you should be happy. He started laughing. It's like, all right, well played. So that was a good story. But they're good. They're good fans in Philadelphia. I'd like to see them. I'd like to see them win that game today, just because it's because I think they're a better fan base than San Francisco. But San Francisco's good though. They are.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens in a couple of weeks when the Super Bowl happens. But yeah. Anyway, getting back to the Civil War.
I know. I saw
okay.
that.
No, don't worry about it. But yeah, getting back to that, that's why I find Chickamauga so fascinating to study, is because it is this 3-day battle that, and you will still read some places that say it's just the 19th and the 20th. I think to say that is like totally discrediting what Minty and Wilder do, because that's why the battle changes so much, because Bragg is forced to go back and be like, oh, okay, now what do we do?
You know what's great about that though is John Wilder's Lightning Brigade, they get a lot of credit. They had those
one of the reasons is because Rosecrans did advocate for them.
It was great. So what happened was Wilder got these guys these Spencer repeater weapons, right? And they're and they said they paid for it themselves. What happened was Wilder secured this loan, and he gave and the soldiers had to pay a loan to get their weapon. Yeah, and they had these ones, but Halleck got so pissed and embarrassed when it came out, he had to paying the soldiers back for their weapons. Yep.
It's like Halleck had to be like, well, you were right about these, and of course, and Halleck's writing Rosecrans saying mounted infantry aren't going to do shit, and Wilder has this hold my beer moment during the Tullahoma campaign.
Big time.
He goes on that raid, doesn't lose anybody on the raid, and comes back, and he's totally effing up the Confederates. And the other thing they do with I think it's Wilder and his men that are some of the ones that are they're doing that shit to get the Confederates to leave Chattanooga, where they're cutting down trees, they're making a lot of dust, they're making it seem like there's a ton of people there, and finally Bragg vacates the dance floor. He's like, we have to leave, they're there. And it's just, I think it's Wilder's guys that are doing it, and he and Minty are these badasses that they don't get the credit they deserve for what they do at Chickamauga. Their story is such an interesting one. Wittenberg's book, Holding the Line at the River of Death, it tells it all, including the background. The one guy, Minty, he spent some time in London, Ontario, which is about an hour and a half from my hometown. But yeah, the story of them getting the Spencer repeaters, Rosecrans being told mounted infantry aren't worth shit by Halleck, and just how that plays into what happens at Chickamauga.
I got to tell one more football story. I'm sorry, I have to. This one. So I just read the comments about the Bills. So a few years ago, me and our friend Bill and our friend Roger, he goes on this sometimes. We were out in Buffalo. You're watching the Patriots play, and this is before Josh Allen. So the Bills really stunk, and the Pats were just beating the piss out of Buffalo. We were having a great time. Beers are flowing, whatever. There was this young couple sitting in front of us, and they were obviously new to dating. You could just tell. right? They didn't hate each other yet, so that was perfect, right? And so they're talking, and so and I go to the guy, and they're both Bills fans, and I go to the guy and I say, hey, you know what the best thing about dating a Bills fan is? And he goes, what? I go, she never expects a ring.
God, and the girl, we have a Bills fan on here.
And the girl looked at me and just glared, and he was laughing. It was pretty funny. So if you can be creative and have fun with that, that's always a good time. But anyway, I'm glad Buffalo lost, though. I am.
We have a Buffalo Bills fan on here.
I know, but whatever.
Well, we had 16 people on here. Now we have 17, so apparently we didn't lose them. So that's good.
That's okay. All right, enough football. But that's
it's fine. It's fine. So anyway, that's why I really wanted to do the Rosecrans episode, because, just Chickamauga in itself is such a great battle to study. But before that, you have Tullahoma, which is, Lincoln said, was one of the most brilliant campaigns in the Civil War. It and Vicksburg are. And I think I saw Unfiltered Historian, who's on Facebook, he's reading Dave Powell and Wittenberg's book about Tullahoma right now, which I really want to read that. I've heard it's really good.
No, I mean, when you look at Tullahoma, it's up there with Grant's Vicksburg campaign. You're talking about some of the best campaigning strategically. Now you're able to get Bragg to vacate into Georgia. I don't want to say without firing a shot, because it's not totally accurate, but it's pretty close. And a lot of that is because of Wilder. We talked about that.
Yeah.
At those gaps we talked about.
Yep.
And how well and it wasn't just the fact that it was Bragg. We talk a lot about how anybody would have beaten Howard at Chancellorsville because the way it was set up. Any general would have been beaten by Rosecrans at Tullahoma.
Yep.
Longstreet, Jackson, you pick on any of the big boys.
Yep. It's not, and that's why it's unfair to say to Bragg, it was Bragg. And it's because some people that don't write Rosecrans say, he was going up against Bragg. It's like, read about Tullahoma, and even Lee would have been beat there. Longstreet, Jackson, any of them would have been beat there. It is an absolute brilliant campaign. And the thing with Wilder is he is this guy that is able to rally his men. He instills such high morale in them. Like that first day at Chickamauga, they are outnumbered. What is it, like 4-1?
Big time.
And they are just, and what they do there, I mean, I appreciate what Buford does on the first day at Gettysburg. But Wilder, this is his like, hold my beer, I'm going to one up Buford. And that's basically what he does.
Oh yeah, no,
what they did is they would go and they would fire a bit at the Confederates and then get back on their horses, and they would ride back even further. And the Confederates kept having to form and then march again. And then they go and they burn that bridge, and the Confederates are totally screwed up. And it is just such, again, Bragg is forced to change his battle plan, which would have kicked Rosecrans' ass had he been able to do it. And you really realize how close, again, the Union comes to losing. But you have these two guys, Minty and Wilder, that basically they saved the Army of the Cumberland. And now they don't win. In a way, it's like Monocacy. They don't win, but they are slowed down. It's a lot. There's a bit of a parallel there with Monocacy. And like, I don't know, anybody that hasn't studied Chickamauga, make sure you study that first day, because it is amazing.
Well, cavalry, I mean, think about it, just with these dismounted cavalry, you look at Marcellus Jones, 8th Illinois, Chicago guy. Like Amanda there, okay? Is hit that one shot, delayed those Confederate troops, his guys, for 2 hours, because it took them that long to set up. And you think about how important that is. It's there's so much that goes into that. That's just so cool to think about. But no, Minty, I mean, John Wilder's a guy who is like a Rosecrans to a smaller level, is a guy who doesn't get the ink that he probably should.
No,
there's no question he did. What he did at Chickamauga, what he did at Tullahoma are just so are must wins at the time. On that 18th, if Minty and Wilder don't hold that bridge and Bragg's guys get right across, that's going to force the Union to evacuate, go right into Chattanooga. Now they won the battle anyway, so it's not like they're going to go over the top with this. But it did. Hey, if anything, it gave Chickamauga a reason to put the first national park in.
It did. And Rosecrans, again, it goes back to Rosecrans. Rosecrans is key in helping to get that first military park established, and that is Chickamauga. And he goes, and I can't imagine, just knowing, my own opinion on him having PTSD, I can't imagine what that must have been like to go back to that battlefield where everything unraveled for him and where he has this reputation that is not good, but he's there to support the troops. And the big difference I see between Chickamauga and Gettysburg is Gettysburg, you have the monuments to the generals. It's an amazing place. You still have the monuments to where the soldiers were, but Chickamauga, there are no monuments to any generals on that battlefield. It is a soldier's battlefield that you knew the soldiers from both sides are coming back there and saying, we were here, we were here. And they're creating it. And it's basically, it's a very grassroots kind of how it starts.
Well, it's like Antietam. Antietam's very similar to it, where it's a soldier's battlefield. You don't see a lot of Union statues. Actually, Chancellorsville is like that too. I mean, they got the Stonewall Monument behind the visitor center there, where he got shot by the 8th North Carolina. But most of the battlefields, for the most part, except Gettysburg, you could probably say our soldiers.
Yeah, the soldiers are telling the story with the positioning and all that. Dan says Monocacy won single-handedly by the 14th New Jersey.
14th New Jersey. Yep. But I don't think, like, there's not a Lew Wallace statue in Monocacy.
There's not.
It seems like that'd be the place for one.
Yeah. And there's
or
not.
At least, and they don't sell Ben-Hur in the visitor center either. You'd think that they would do that.
Could you imagine if they did?
You know, next time we talk to Mad Borders, we got to ask him why they don't sell Ben-Hur in the visitor center.
Well, they won't be doing an author signing.
I don't know. We'll see. Get Miss Cleo, get Miss Cleo back. She could probably figure something out. But seriously, though, I mean, but that will be a place. I mean, you could imagine, seriously, if you could see a Lew Wallace statue and a John Brown Gordon statue.
That actually would be really cool. At
Monocacy, it'd be very easy.
Because that is a moment for the two of them. I think that is it's stuck with them. It is Lew Wallace's best moment in the Civil War. And it was where Gordon said to him, you guys might have lost, but you slowed us down and you stopped us. And I mean, even Gordon admitted, like, holy shit, this guy is really good. And Gentili, I don't know if he's still on here or not, he finally visited Monocacy yesterday and he's messaging us and he's saying, oh my God, this place is amazing. Monocacy is one of those places that when you go to it, it has this wow factor to it. Absolutely amazing battlefield to go to. And you finally, it's really what made me understand what the battle was. Same thing for me when I went to Chickamauga. Now, Chickamauga, I think it's obviously very much bigger than Monocacy, bigger than Gettysburg, but there still is that you finally start to understand parts of the battle that you couldn't before. And the thing with Chickamauga, like, Monocacy is a lot of like open fields and stuff. Chickamauga, you're in a forest, and then the next minute you're in like this kind of open meadow. And I like the way you described it in our episode. You said it's like a bar fight where every room is different and it spills out. And so
it's like
constantly have to change the tactics.
It's like the end of Blazing Saddles, where it just spills.
That is Chickamauga right there. It is.
They don't sell Kevin. They don't sell. Last time I was at the archives, they sold National Treasure and a whole bunch of National Treasure stuff. They must have stopped doing that. Because I bought a little. They had a thing there. It was like in the movie, they had that little coin thing that they sold from National Treasure. They must have stopped selling that. They used to. That's too bad.
Sucks.
That's too bad.
But yeah, like Chickamauga, Rosecrans has a hand in it being created as a national military park, and it's the first one. And it is, it's such I mean, anybody who's been there knows what an amazing place it is to visit. And we got to go to Opdyke's Memorial, or the stone for Opdyke's Tigers.
Well, that's true, but no, it's I'm surprised. I'm surprised that more people. We've said this a million times. And it was good that he finally went. I remember Kevin didn't go there for a while either. He lives right around
Monocacy. The corner, so it is just one of those ones where it's like, holy.
Well, it's almost like oh God, I'm in Gettysburg for the weekend. I want to take a couple hours and drive to Maryland. But Frederick, Maryland's a great town. You get the National Museum of Medicine there.
Yep.
You got some great restaurants and bars. You obviously got the battlefield. But you go there and you're like, holy crap, because it's pristine. It really, really is.
Oh, it's beautiful there. You really get a sense of what happened. And I mean, I encourage people to go, like we first went during the autumn, and that's where I really understood what Gordon was doing, because you're able to walk down to the river where he forded across it with his men, and you understand why he was able to do what he did, but you also understand why Wallace was able to do what he did too.
Well, Wallace, it was like Buford. He didn't expect to win. He didn't expect him to slow him down. Now, Grant allowed that 6th Corps to go back from Petersburg back to Washington to Fort Stevens to defend that. But if Early rolls right through there, they're into Washington. I mean, and so they're going to ransack it. They're not going to hold it, but they are. I mean, Washington was having, civilians armed, and it was the most heavily fortified city in the world. But at that moment, it had its pants down.
Yep.
Because Lincoln felt it wasn't that need to be defended anymore, that Lee was pinned in, and give Lee credit, because he was able to sniff that out. And Early, if it wasn't for Wallace, is going to get right into DC, right heading into the 1864 election. And who the hell knows? I mean, no one knows for sure.
No, but
it's certainly a possibility that the public in the North might say, we can't defend the Capitol. What the hell are we doing? The hell with this.
Yeah, like we need to. Yeah, it would not have been good for morale at all. And then, if that happens, does Sherman taking Atlanta really matter, or is it enough to kind of tip the scales to Lincoln winning the election? Sherman seems to think him taking Atlanta is why Lincoln won the election.
Oh, I think most people put their. You could actually probably say Antietam. You could say Vicksburg. It depends on what your favorite flavor is. Yeah. But Atlanta certainly was the. Atlanta came with the right victory at the right time. But if Washington D.C. gets sacked, is that going to invalidate? Is that going to trump Atlanta?
Well, that's what I mean.
And that's the thing. You're talking about voters. Does McClellan say this dude can't hold his own capital? He had to evacuate to New York City with his family. Now he ended up staying back anyway. But there was a plan for him to evacuate.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that play out? If the voters go, this is ridiculous, but we'll never know because of Lew Wallace, and so that so that's why you can have a hate on for him for all these other silly reasons, but I mean, the reality is the battle that saved Washington is actually pretty right. It's pretty true.
Oh yeah, it is. I don't think that's a exaggeration or anything. And when you go to Monocacy, you really do see that. They do it very well there. Like it's a great visitor center. It's a beautiful, pristine battlefield. Just they got great hoodies, right?
They do. Well, let's get ready to jump off. It's 11:45. It's almost time to get going here. So we got some fun stuff coming up. So we're going to drop the Alex Rose episode next week or so. And that'll be fun. People will like that. And then we got some stuff coming up. We got some episode ideas coming down the pike. We'll get up there. But we have the get together in Gettysburg coming up. That'll be
January the 18th at 1:00 at Fourscore Brewing. We'll hang out for a couple hours. So if anybody's in the area, come join us, say hi. But if you want to have some beers and hang out, that's a good point. So you never know. That'll be a good time. I have a feeling we'll have a good time. So we'll be around for the whole weekend. So all right. So let's get ready to go. So maybe have a great weekend. Enjoy your football today. Bengals 31, Chiefs 17. San Francisco 27, Philadelphia 24. Take them all over the bank, and we'll have a good weekend. Stay safe, stay warm. Hopefully the weather is good where you are at. It looks like it's finally, it's cloudy out today, but it's dry, so we're okay. Time to go for a walk.